live, and we are live. Good evening, everybody. It is Friday Eve. It is 7:30 o'clock over here in Central Florida, and we have a busy night ahead. We are going to be talking all sorts of different things tonight, so thank you so much in advance for taking some time out of your Thursday evening to join us here in the Weather Center. We've got a full boat this evening. We're talking severe weather. A potentially prolific severe weather event is imminent within the next 24 hours for our friends up there in the Midwest, the Ohio River Valley, as well as the Central Plains expanding into the lower Great Lakes region. And then on top of that, the second mode of this severe weather outbreak is expected to ignite right over top of the deep south from Texas through Louisiana, Arkansas, and especially the eastern periphery of Louisiana through Mississippi, Alabama, spreading into Georgia, Tennessee, and further towards the north. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Let's go ahead and hit that like button. I was going to say live button. Yes, let's all go live at the same time. Hit that like button, everybody. It's good to see everyone in the chat. Let me pop the chat out right now so I can have the questions front and center. Mr. Man, JJ, good to see you. PM as well. Bob, Thomas Dellinger, great to have you back with us. Chris Mazzell, Bob again. James Keene, greetings from Tampa Bay. Good to see you, my friend. Frankie MMA is watching from Live Oak, Florida. Thanks to have you with us. Going to be dialing in whether or not this severe weather actually makes it down into the Florida Peninsula, because I do think, even though we're only at day 4 and right now the yellow shading is down to about the northern periphery of the peninsula, I do expect that we will at least get some thunderstorms down in the Orlando metro area. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. One Nation Weather, my good friend up there. Good evening, Zaria. Working on my own graphics for an upcoming stream right now as well. Happened to get a notification. I have been doing fairly well. Very busy, very busy. I've been extremely busy, and the weather is also keeping us very busy as well, but I will definitely have to let me know in the chat what time your live stream is going to be going on so I can try to hop in there later on as well, pending the time that you get that scheduled. Mick and Marley, fantastic to see you. Brooke Ward, hello there. Barbara, I am right in the center of all that in Louisiana. I know that Mike is also fretting over this system, and that's precisely why we're going to jump live here and talk all things weather. And there he is, my man Mike, out there over in the New Orleans, the Kenner, Louisiana area. Brian Davis tuning in from Sherwood, Arkansas. Chris, good evening. All right. Let's get started. We're going to, good evening to everybody. I don't want to cut the introductions short or the hellos. I will get back to you all in just a moment's notice. But right now we're looking at a different satellite shot. We're looking at derived motion winds based on what the visible satellite is pulling in. And there's a couple of things I want you to notice already. First and foremost, we have a nice little finger of the subtropical jet just ripping across northern Mexico through Texas, Oklahoma, and further off towards the east. The reason I bring that up is because this is what I think is going to help to really invigorate the southern mode of this severe weather threat. I do think that's what's going to help to really ramp up the wind shear and tilt these thunderstorms to produce not only the discrete cells that we're talking about in the warm sector of this feature, but also along that quasi-linear convective system. We could possibly have very, very strong winds, talking in excess of 60, 70, possibly 80 miles an hour with how much dry air is going to be building in on the backside of this feature to enhance those D-Cape values. We'll talk about that here momentarily as well. This is our storm system in question right there, already working its way through California. It is beyond the Pac Northwest, now rocking through the Four Corner states, and you can see tremendous amounts of diffluent flow with it already. And strong diffluent flow as well. I see some of those wind barbs in there, anywhere between 50 to 80 knots of wind. And this is going to be your 700 millibar flow. That's another thing, too. Since this is derived motion, we're not necessarily looking at winds highest up in the atmosphere. We're looking at a conglomeration of all sorts of different levels here just based on the motion of the cloud cover. And we have some pretty impressive values just spewing up out of the southwest and then eventually flowing parallel along the Canadian-United States international border and through the Great Lakes. Our battle zones, as they would say in the OG Twister, are going to be up here with Phase 1, and then Phase 2 is going to get going down in the south about 6 to 8 hours after the first. And that's one thing I want to get out in the open immediately with this live stream, because I know a lot of folks will tune out after a minute or two. There is 2 phases to this. There's 2 modes to this that are going to go down, and they're going to be in close proximity to one another. When Friday gets going tomorrow evening, it will be underway right around this time, just around sunset. Between 6 to 8 o'clock is when things are really going to go downhill. And then from there, as we get into Saturday morning, the early morning hours of Saturday, we will have some ignition over Dixie Alley, over the deep south, Louisiana, the southeastern portion of Arkansas, especially Mississippi, and then through Alabama. This is going to be between, I want to say, anywhere from 4 to 5 a.m., running till about just before noon is when everything is going to start to pop. So we have phase 1 up here, phase 2 down here, and then this is our wild card over the mid-Atlantic and down into the southeast. I'll show you what Storm Prediction Center has, but I'll roughly draw it in right now. This is their day 3, or I should say day 4, level 2 risk. Just a 15% shading from about the Pennsylvania, West Virginia, Maryland area up there in the southeast region, or I should say the southeast corner of the northeast United States, through the mid-Atlantic on the lee of the Appalachians down into northern Florida, running at about the same latitude line as, we'll say, Gainesville, maybe St. Augustine, getting into Putnam and Flagler County, which is why, just in time for me to go in and do the evening shows, I'm probably going to be talking more severe weather for Central Floridians as we go through the next couple of days. Here's a look at that storm system on the water vapor satellite over the west coast. You can see a very vigorous center of circulation of our upper low right through there, pretty much moving right over top Las Vegas, it looks like. Nellis and Creech Air Force Base are definitely getting their hands handed to, or their butts handed to them. Hold on to your butts. I haven't worked one of those in a little bit. You can see all the outer edge of it moving through Arizona, Utah, up into the Snake River Valley of Idaho, and then up across Montana and Wyoming. They're probably looking at a pretty spectacular downsloping wind event along the lee of the Rockies in both Wyoming, Colorado, maybe even down into New Mexico. You can see some of that cross-barrier flow even down here, moving through Baja California as the base of the trough rips through Baja California, right in the southern base of the United States border there. And then last but certainly not least, here's another look at our water vapor, just kind of setting the stage. Here's one storm system here, finger of the subtropical jet, kind of creating a bit of a shared energy region between the polar front and the subtropical jet. And then this is our big old trough in question, helping to intensify the ridge that's already positioned over central and eastern United States. We are currently under a negative Pacific North American oscillation, which is why it has been so warm out here for the last couple of days. And now here you go. This is going to be all the graphics. This is the latest from Storm Prediction Center. You can see our level 4 risk centered almost directly over top Illinois, more so positioned between the border of Illinois and Missouri, the southeast corner of Iowa, the western fringes of Tennessee and Kentucky, and then Indiana. I don't want to exclude Indiana. It's very easy to look at this static image, and that's the key takeaway here. It's a static image. So even though the colors are not moving, once we get development here and that low gets going and we start to get those arcing lines of potential supercell action, it's going to continue to transition off towards the east. So don't be surprised if we get severe weather up into the likes of Minnesota, Wisconsin, even the Michigan Peninsula just to the east of the Great Lakes area, and then further off into Ohio. That's the one thing I don't like about these graphics sometimes, is because they're just a picture. You can't take it through time. You can't kind of push it forward to get people to understand where the threat will be moving. This is technically in motion. Our low is going to form here, and that first system is going to rocket immediately off towards the northeast, pulling in a lot of that energy along the south side. So it's safe to say that this severe risk is going to continue to move up towards the northeast as well, which will then inevitably allow for that increase in our jet stream energy again to spill under the south side of it and get the second wave going down across the south. And there you have it right here. Oh no, pardon me, excuse me. This is our tornado outlook for tomorrow. Well, it goes without saying, hatched area for a possibility of significant EF2 or stronger / long duration tornadoes over the Midwest, the Ohio, Mississippi valleys, and then an extension of that further off towards the east as that system hopefully winds down. Now here's the day 3 risk. I keep wanting to say day 2 because it's very far and few between we get the moderate on day 3. But here is your day 3 risk. We have that large area of red down there from eastern Louisiana, unfortunately encompassing Baton Rouge, Kenner, Louisiana, New Orleans, Lake Pontchartrain, and then through, I want to say, 75% of Mississippi, and then approximately 65 to 70% of Alabama. significant severe weather event for sure. This is the second phase, and I know there's a lot of meteorologists out there right now, big-name meteorologists, who are contemplating and wondering whether or not they're going to go 5 out of 5 down here. There's the potential. I'm not going to lie to you. I personally, just based on the surface area and where it is our models are pinpointing some really strong and rapidly intensifying thunderstorms, I can foresee them going with a high. Do I think they will? I kind of hope they don't, because 5 out of 5, that is off the chain. Obviously, that's going to create a lot of stress for a lot of individuals out there, but especially just to the immediate north of here. So, Mike, and if anybody else out there is watching, I think our greatest risk, if we were to go to that level 5 risk, is going to be to the north of that area. It'll be northern half of Mississippi, the northern half of Alabama, I would personally think. We shall see. We'll see what happens. But then, regardless, you can see just how expansive this severe weather threat is. This here is a transition of what day 2 showed. So if you remember, I was just now talking, we had that moderate risk through Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, but that is going to transition. So what you see on the northern half of this, from about where my black line is drawn in north, that's that first system still moving along towards the east and northeast. So that's why we still have that level 2 risk. It's not like we're going to have stuff building up down across the deep south and then stretching up into the Midwest and the lower Great Lakes region. That's still the transitioning first system that's going to be kind of interacting with the base of the second system that's going to get going. And this is where this is where it gets pretty wild, and why some folks are thinking they could go 5 out of 5 with this system. Because we have the greater than or equal to 60% shot of severe weather within 25 miles. And just so I can break that down to you all, when we say within a point, or 25 miles within a point, that's essentially taking a grid box, 25 miles, 25 miles, 25, and creating a box with a perimeter, or I should say sides of equidistant lengths of 25 miles. And when you have a 60% shot of getting, or greater, I should say, of getting severe weather within that little grid box, that means it is widespread. It is scattered coverage, which means there's high confidence that within 25 nautical miles, there's going to be a very dangerous storm. And then you can kind of build upon that. For every 25 nautical miles, you have more grid boxes around each other. You could almost make a case to say within every one of those grid boxes, you're going to have a strong, damage-inducing severe weather thunderstorm. Oh, I have them pulled up here, ONW, and I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan at all. And then here's that day 4 risk. You can see eastern seaboard from Pennsylvania kind of running the border of New York State through Maryland, Delaware, etc., down all the way to the upper periphery of central Florida. And the level 2 risk, or I should say the probability of severe, the 15% probabilistic here is equivalent to their level 2 risk. So that's why I'm thinking that we're probably going to get a small bit of a translation in either direction with this feature, either it be to the north or to the south. So even here in central Florida, we got to be paying attention to this, and I would definitely recommend it. And you can see here I actually had the European model, the ensembles here, pulled up to try to see exactly how much of that surface cape is going to bleed over into Florida. And pretty unanimous agreement. It looks like the European model is thinking that on average we could still see anywhere between, we'll say, about 950 to maybe 13 to 1500 joules per kilogram of cape down into the Florida peninsula. So, yeah, the hatched red area is not good. If they go high risk, will probably not be too bad. High risk days usually are dud. Thankfully, honestly, I hope that's the case. That's why I don't want them to do it. Oh, and this is, well, I didn't want to pull this up. Excuse me. Spoiler alert, there's something out there in the Atlantic that I was looking at. But all right, here is the national blend of models. We're going to start with the heavier rainfall first, because I want to also highlight just how much water we're going to be getting out of some of these storms. And I'm going to do just total precip, because that's one thing that we dismissed with Central Florida. When we had the significant severe weather the other day on Monday, and we had the EF2 tornado in Seminole County, we didn't really talk too much about the flood risk with the stronger thunderstorms that were moving through the Panhandle and the Big Bend area. So now, if you watch, looking at the NOAA blend, as that system works its way through and the first round of severe weather gets going, if you notice, we get a lot of rainfall before that second mode gets going. And even as that second phase gets going for lower Indiana through Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, we have rainfall totals that could possibly exceed 2 to 3 inches with just these stronger storms. And once again, to put that into perspective to everybody, when I say rain totals 2 to 3 inches, we're not talking, a continuous 6, 8, 10, 12-hour phase of light, steady rainfall. We're talking a very intense downpour that's going to fall in minutes, because these systems are going to be rapidly accelerating off towards the northeast. And so that's why I wanted to bring these up first. I wanted to make sure that we cover our bases and we talk heavier rainfall, because you can see that heavy pocket of rainfall actually extends all the way through southeast Michigan, through Indiana, Ohio, and then across the Carolinas up into the northeast. So it goes to show the flood risk is definitely there, and that's one thing I want us to highlight first, because you may not receive a tornado, you may not receive those damaging winds. However, the rainfall is going to be a prevalent risk. April Brooks, thanks for joining in. All right, and now let's get into the HRRR. I'm going to take you in very close. I'm trying to watch the time as well, so I don't bleed into my next stream, because I do have one directly after this. Oh, Twister Chaser 1, good to see you, Nick. I will be chasing tomorrow and Saturday. Good luck out there. I hope that you can catch some good footage, good pictures. Let me know what you find. So here is the 18Z HRRR. We're going to look at the future radar, and you can see already with that storm system moving through, we have some action that's going on through Arizona, where my parents are down there in southern Arizona, up into Utah, parts of Wyoming. Colorado is also going to see some action, Montana, and so on and so forth. And then as the system gets going, notice it's really cool how the model captures what happens and why we go from one threat mode to another. Because if you notice, as it hits the lee of the Rockies right in through here, the front range of the Rocky Mountains, notice how our reflectivities just pretty much disappear. And what happens is, and why it is that this is going to be such a significant event, is we have all that adiabatic warming and drying that goes on. That's going to help to not only instigate the development of a dry line feature down across the south, helping to poise more of an issue for severe weather down there, but it's also going to enhance the fire danger and kind of reinvigorate some of the low-level jet activity that's going to be ongoing with our phase 1 or our mode 1 up to the northeast here. And so if I track us further in time and we go to about Friday night, so this is middle of the day on Friday, notice we're still not seeing too much, and then we finally get ignition closer to the second half of the day, and it looks like the 18Z RRR is thinking that we're going to see the initiation happen in Iowa. It looks like the northeast corner of Kansas, the northwest quadrant of Missouri, and then back into Nebraska. Now, I don't think we're going to see a ton of severe weather in Nebraska. If you look, our low pressure is here, which means we have the cold conveyor and the dry sector on the backside of it wrapping in with all this rainfall. So if anything, if we have cold enough temperatures, this will likely all be snowfall, possible blizzard conditions as this system continues to deepen almost explosively. These are your cells that are going to be producing your straight line winds, your damaging hail, and your tornadoes. And there could possibly be widespread tornado warnings, whether or not this goes linear or not. Initially, it does look like the model is gonna force it into a linear mode, but regardless, if you look real close through Iowa and parts of Missouri, you can see the shape of the supercells embedded within that line. And because this system is going to occlude so quickly and increase the vorticity on the northeast side of it, that's also going to get these things spinning and churning very quickly. So it's not looking good out there. It really isn't. I'm very concerned for this, and I personally wish I could go chase. You could see as the southern periphery or the southern tail of that line of supercells moves into Illinois, those are all spinning. In fact, let me just take you in for a closer look. I know that we're running out of time here, and I have about 10 minutes until my next stream, but whatever. We're going to dig into this. I kind of figured I should have did this a little bit later, but we're here. We're going to rock through. These are intense thunderstorms right along the leading edge of that feature. We have very strong mid-level flow out of the south, and then we have upper-level flow just screaming out of the southwest. and that's what's going to help to get these things spinning. If I keep this, I'll go forward one more panel right there. I'll stop it there, and then I'll switch over to our winds. Let's go to the upper level winds. We'll go to 700 millibar winds. Bam, you can see that low-level jet just screaming out of the south and southwest. But then if I switch this over to the 925, you can see how we have really good spreading of the winds and confluence right along that band. Winds coming together right where the band is expected to maintain its intensity as we go overnight. And then you switch up to the upper levels, and you have a really good shear component right over top of it. So the speed shear is definitely there. The directional shear is definitely there. So, and then as One Nation Weather had mentioned, here's your significant tornado parameter, just off the chain. And the worst part is this is not even the worst of it. Let me go ahead and zoom back out. We'll go down to the deep south. Where is my deep south overlay? Let's see. There we go. Let's go to the deep south. I don't know why it automatically transitioned to the 19Z. I want the 18Z. Here's the SIGTOR parameters for the deep south. There's that warm conveyor coming up for Saturday night, fueling the threat to the north, and then down across the south right there. Good God. There you are, Jehovah Jireh. I love it. Good to see you. Thank you so much for joining in tonight. Glad you found the links. So this is why I think they have the justification to go 5 out of 5, because that is a gnarly setup. This is a very gnarly setup, and it doesn't get any better than that. You can see down through the eastern fringe of Louisiana. Mike, if you're watching right now, truthfully, when I say this, I mean it in every fiber of my being. If you could please keep in touch with me through Saturday morning, I would love that very much so. Brady, good to see you. Daddy Shark, I agree. That is immense. Same thing with our supercell parameters. Supercell parameters are way up there. They are cranking. And as PM has already mentioned, it's because of the anomalous warmth in the Gulf and just the orientation of this system. The NAM is also kind of doing the same thing. You can see that first phase gets going. Nice arc of supercell action that's going to move through Missouri, Iowa, up into Wisconsin, Minnesota, and then through Illinois, and then that southern mode is going to get going, and it's going to get going very quickly. And that's why I really do believe that even though folks aren't really discussing it too much, if you look, we're getting some enhancement off of the subtropical jet. I think the warmth in the Gulf and then the warmth that's also shared between the southern coast of Mexico down into our ENZOs 3 and 1.2 or 1+2 regions, it's helping to increase the strength of our subtropical jet. The subtropical jet is right through here. So it's almost like we have this weird hybrid amalgamation of a neutral/El Nino pattern. And I'll take us over to the SSTs and I'll show you that really quick and I'll explain my work. So let's go to, do I want the Pacific? Will the Pacific show everything? Will the Pacific show everything? No, it won't. Let's go to the Atlantic Basin. That'll work. Let's go to the anomalies. So here you go. We have a huge warm pocket in the central and western Gulf. We have really anomalous warmth right off the coast of Central America, off the coast of Mexico, and then we have our warming trend that's been ongoing in parts of the Pacific. So that is what's probably helping to invigorate some of our subtropical jet out there, which I also believe and attribute to our severe weather action that we had here in Florida because we have that increase in mid to upper level winds. Let me show you the continental U.S., and I'll pull us out a little bit more. Let's go to North America, and I'll show you the jet level winds so you can get a better feel for it. We'll go to 200 millibars, and you can see if I go forward in time, there's a clear delineation right there. Beautiful shot. You have your polar front jet, continuous polar front jet moving through the pattern there. No signs of an Arctic jet. Somebody mentioned Arctic air with this. This is not an Arctic setup, and I'm really sick and tired of people botching that. This is your subtropical jet. That is not the polar front jet. That is your subtropical jet, and if you look at the thickness lines, you can see it very, very plain as day. There's your 570 line right over the south. The 570 line is right in through here. There's your subtropical air. Some folks would argue the 564 line is your subtropical air. And then here is your 540 line right in through there. So that is definitely polar mixing with subtropical. And that's why we have such a strong punch of dry air over the Rockies, coming down the Rockies, drying out even further, and then running face first into the ridge that's built in over the eastern half of the United States. This is like clockwork. A textbook severe weather pattern. Look at the heights on this. Bam. Strong amplified ridge over the eastern United States and a very deep and digging trough over the western and the central portion of it. That is your negative PNA. If I switch us over to the teleconnection, switch us to the PNA, bam, we're in that negative phase right now. We're going to try to come out of it because of this trough of low pressure and the cold air coming down, but regardless, either way, if I go back to the Euro weeklies, we're going to go back into the negative phase once again, and that's why April could possibly be really active in terms of tornadoes. And severe weather in general. Forgive me, not just tornadoes, but severe weather in general. Here's a look at the WRF. The WRF, I've been looking at this just as like kind of a sanity check to see what they're thinking. The WRF is in full agreement with what our other models are thinking. Second phase gets going, although it doesn't really give a huge vote of confidence to this mode. It thinks it might start to flare up a little bit later. It only goes out approximately 48 hours. Then here is the FV3, a model, a high-resolution thunderstorm model based off of the GFS, in full agreement, showing a huge swath of significant weather action, and it actually does a fantastic job of showing the two phases here. So there's phase one, lots of discrete supercellular activity. You can see one there, 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 one there. We don't want to see that because these are your storms that will produce the large, damaging, and very dangerous hailstones. On top of that, them being by themselves, it's a lot easier to get those longer-lasting, pure vertical funnel, stovepipe-style tornadoes that will wreak havoc. And then on top of that, as we go through Saturday morning, notice what happens over the southeast. Nothing, 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 and then at sunrise, bam, immediate convective initiation with a lot of discrete activity out ahead of where the system is expected to form up. You get two little branches of it right in through here. And that's why I'm thinking, if you look at the way the FV3 and even the HRRR earlier were highlighting it, it does seem like if they were going to shade us in for a 5 out of 5, it would be somewhere right in through there. Just a contiguous line of very, very strong, damaging winds. Very strong, damaging winds. And if you come down to the moisture, look at the precipitable water. Look at that gradient there. I have College of DuPage pulled up here so we can take a look at the dew point temperature. Actually, let's go to the Theta E, my favorite tool. Look at that dry line down there. Spectacular looking dry line. Look at that gradient right through there. Bam. If you couldn't spot the severe weather on this chart, I would say hand over your weatherman or weather person card and just quit, because there's a clear line of stark contrast in our air masses. There's a dew point to kind of reinforce the general thinking, and you can see where the dry line is at first. Your front is to the north. This is very interesting. Here is our parent system pushing the front up towards the northeast. We have this acceleration in our low-level flow down across Texas into Louisiana, and that's where your dry line begins to set up. And then the front finally starts to come through later on into the period. And I wish that this went a little further out because I want to see what Florida looks like as we go down the road. Let me come here real quick. We'll go to the dew point. Yeah, look at that. Spectacular dry line gradient. You got 26-degree dew points, 18-degree dew points on the left-hand side, and then you have dew points all the way up into the mid to upper 60s on the other side. That is a stark 40. That's like, I should say, a textbook 40-degree difference there. So, alrighty, everybody, I'm going to go ahead and cut this live stream. I'm going to head over to the other one, and we're going to talk tropics here in a moment, and I may pop back up later on after this. But the key takeaways here are going to be Friday night into Saturday morning, and I may try to do another live update on the severe weather tomorrow, first half of the day before things start getting to go, or before things start initiating in the evening. And yeah, definitely head on over to my tropical live stream because truthfully, that's also up and coming. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm just going to say hashtag hold on to your butts because we definitely have a lot to talk about there. Let me go ahead and start pulling that live stream up right now while we're still in this chat. And then we will segue on over. There we go. All right. So I will see you all over in the other stream. If we have time, I'll also probably pop back into Severe Weatherland, and I will talk to you guys very soon. But until then, in approximately 60 seconds, this is Weather Center Nazario, temporarily signing out.